I lost her forever. She doesn't choose me anymore. It's a sentence I repeat to myself over and over in the quiet, usually late at night, when I can hear her breathing from the other room, or sometimes, not hear her at all. It doesn't sound dramatic when I say it out loud, but it hits me in my chest every single time. There's no shouting, no fights, no betrayal in the way people imagine when they think of a breakup. Just absence, the slow, creeping disappearance of someone who used to be everything. We were normal. That's the first thing I have to remind myself. Or maybe I've been clinging to a memory that never really existed, polished by nostalgia. We had routines that felt almost sacred. Mornings in the tiny kitchen we barely had room to walk in, coffee steaming between us, her brushing a strand of hair behind her ear while I fumbled with toast. She laughed at my jokes, even the bad ones. Sometimes we would just sit there, in silence, drinking our coffee, but the silence wasn't heavy, it was comfortable, safe. I remember one Saturday, months ago, we had decided to try making pancakes from scratch. She had flour on her nose, and I took a picture just to tease her later. She shoved me playfully and said, "Stop documenting everything, or I'm breaking up with you for real." I laughed. She laughed. It felt like love, easy, effortless, like we had all the time in the world. I used to watch her while she worked, sitting across the room with my laptop. She'd hum softly to herself, eyes focused, lips moving as she typed. I used to think I could watch her forever. And maybe that's the cruelest thing, the fact that I could never get enough, but somehow, I wasn't enough for her. It started with small things. Little cracks I tried to ignore because I didn't want to be paranoid, didn't want to ruin what I thought was good. A missed text here, sorry, I forgot, there. I started noticing the way her fingers would linger over her phone in a way they never did before, the way she'd nod absently when I spoke, pretending to listen but not really hearing. I remember once, I told her about a dream I had, one of those weird, tangled dreams where everything made no sense, and she smiled politely and said, "Huh. That's interesting, that's all," and it hit me, cold. I used to be the person she wanted to tell everything to. I tried to tell myself it was just stress. Work, life, deadlines, she had a lot on her plate. But the truth is, the emotional distance didn't come with a reason I could understand. It just was. I remember texting her one night after a particularly long day. I don't even remember what I wrote, just that my fingers hovered over the keyboard for 20 minutes before I sent a message that read something like, "Hey, do you want to talk?" It took her 2 hours to reply. And when she did, it wasn't warmth or apology, it was brief, clipped, distant, "Not really, sorry. Maybe later." I waited, I held onto that hope, maybe later, for hours. I even convinced myself that later she would come back to me. But the later never came. Not really, and that's when the doubt started eating at me. I began replaying every interaction, every word, every look. Had I done something wrong? Was I too clingy? Too quiet? Did I somehow fail her in ways I couldn't see? I started apologizing for things that didn't make sense, for moments that didn't deserve apology. And she just accepted them quietly, or sometimes didn't even notice. The worst part is that it's subtle. There's no fight, no door slammed, no dramatic confession, just the quiet erosion of her attention, her care, her choice. And me, trying to chase shadows, trying to fix what isn't fixable. It wasn't just that she was distant. It was the way she made me feel invisible in small, almost imperceptible ways. The little moments that should have been normal, the everyday gestures we used to take for granted, they started slipping away. She used to touch me without thinking, her hand brushing mine as we walked through the kitchen, a quick hug when I came home, a hand on my shoulder while we watched TV. Now, she barely let me near her. Sometimes, I'd reach for her hand on the couch, and she'd pull it away like it had burned her. She didn't say anything. She didn't explain. She didn't need to. Her body said enough. I began noticing how often she'd sigh when I asked something, or answer in one-word responses. It was subtle, tiny, but over time, it piled up into a mountain I couldn't climb. I tried to rationalize it. She's stressed. She's tired. I'm imagining it, but deep down, I knew. She was checking out, quietly, piece by piece. I started keeping track, like a journal in my head. Monday. She didn't say, "Good morning." Tuesday. Didn't ask how my day went. Wednesday. Ignored my text for 4 hours. Thursday. Rolled her eyes when I laughed at a joke. Friday. Left the room mid-conversation. I felt like I was losing her in slow motion, and the worst part was, I couldn't stop it. I didn't know how. I started apologizing for everything, even for things I hadn't done. I said sorry when I laughed too loud, when I asked questions, when I touched her accidentally. I even apologized for texting her too much, my own words strangling me as I typed them. One night, I tried to confront her. I didn't shout. I didn't demand answers. I just said, "I feel like you're pulling away." She stared at me for a long time, long enough for my heart to sink to the floor. And then she said the thing that haunted me more than any fight could have. "I don't know what you want me to do. I'm not unhappy. I'm just me. Just me." The words should have made sense. They should have comforted me. But they didn't. They left me spinning. Because I realized then, she wasn't withdrawing because of me. She was withdrawing because she had already chosen something else, or maybe nothing at all. And I had no place in that choice anymore. After that, the nights got worse. I'd lie awake, listening to her breathing, trying to convince myself that she was just tired, or that I was overthinking. But I wasn't overthinking. I could feel the absence in every glance she didn't give, every laugh that didn't reach her eyes, every hug that was too brief to matter. I started imagining conversations she wasn't having with me. I pictured her telling friends things she used to tell me. I imagined her laughing at jokes I didn't hear, living moments I wasn't part of. I knew it was paranoia. I knew it was torturing myself. But it was also the truth. I was losing her in ways I couldn't stop, couldn't control, couldn't even fully explain. And still, I stayed. I stayed because love isn't neat. It isn't rational. It's a quiet madness that convinces you to endure silence, to endure neglect, to endure being small in the life of the person you gave everything to. I stayed because I couldn't accept that she had stopped choosing me. We had moments, too. Tiny, fleeting sparks that made me question my own despair. A laugh, a smile, a brush of her hand against mine. They were enough to convince me that maybe it wasn't over, that maybe I could still find my way back. And every time it happened, I clung to it, desperate, pathetic. I remember one night, she came to the couch and rested her head on my chest. I held her, heart hammering, convinced that this was the turning point. I whispered, "I missed you today." She didn't look up. She didn't say anything. She just breathed, warm against me, and I wanted to memorize it, pretend it meant something it didn't. Because even in the rare moments of closeness, the emotional withdrawal was there. Like a shadow I couldn't shake, a storm I couldn't outrun. And that's when I started asking myself the questions I still can't answer. Why am I still here? Why am I holding on to someone who isn't holding on to me? When did she stop choosing me? I don't know if there's an exact moment you realize a relationship is over. Maybe it's gradual, like erosion. Maybe it's a million tiny choices that don't seem like choices at all. But I know this. I realized it one night when I went to reach for her hand, and she didn't take it. And she didn't stop me from leaving. She didn't even notice. That's when I knew. I lost her forever. After that night on the couch, things didn't get better. If anything, the quiet moments of closeness became even more confusing, like flashes of light in a room that was mostly dark. I'd see her smile, hear her laugh, and my chest would soar for a moment, just to crash a second later when I realized the warmth wasn't really meant for me. It was fleeting, almost accidental. She started making choices without me. Not big, dramatic choices, nothing you could point to and call betrayal, but small, consistent ones that slowly erased my place in her life. She started going out, with friends, more often, leaving me behind, and when I asked to join she would shrug, "I just want some alone time." Alone time. I felt like I was invisible in my own home. Conversations became exercises in frustration. She'd answer questions I didn't even ask, or change the topic mid-sentence. I began rehearsing what I wanted to say before I even said it, trying to anticipate the ways she would deflect, distract, or dismiss me. It was exhausting, like I was constantly walking a tightrope over a chasm I couldn't see. One evening, I tried to tell her how much it hurt me. I said, "I feel like I'm losing you." She looked at me, calm, composed, and said, "Maybe you are. But that doesn't mean I've stopped loving you." Maybe you are. I replayed those words in my head 100 times. They weren't comforting. They weren't even particularly cruel. They were just indifferent. A recognition of truth without any effort to bridge it. She wasn't trying to hurt me. She was just existing in her own space, and I wasn't part of it. I started noticing the little manipulations, subtle but sharp. When I got upset, she would blink slowly, almost in pity, and say, "You're overreacting." She never said it in anger. She said it in that soft, calm way that made me doubt my own emotions. My anger, my fear, my longing, all of it suddenly seemed irrational. I began to monitor myself. Every text I sent, every question I asked, every touch I reached for, I second-guessed it. I wanted to shrink down, make myself small enough to not disturb her. But shrinking didn't work. The more I tried, the further she drifted. I remember a Thursday night, sitting in the living room, watching her stare at her laptop. I touched her shoulder lightly. She flinched, almost imperceptibly. I whispered, "Are you okay?" I said, "I'm fine," she said. But her voice was flat. Not annoyed, not angry. Just neutral. I remember thinking, she doesn't even see me anymore. The paranoia set in slowly. I began imagining her thoughts when I wasn't around. Was she bored? Was she thinking of someone else? I tried to tell myself that these were just my insecurities, but they weren't. I could feel it. Every glance she didn't give me, every laugh that didn't reach me, every small choice that excluded me, they were signs. And still, I stayed. I stayed because love isn't neat. It isn't rational. It convinces you to endure silence, to endure neglect, to endure being small in the life of the person you gave everything to. I stayed because I couldn't accept that she had stopped choosing me. But the cracks were everywhere. I remember walking into the kitchen one morning, seeing her humming softly while she made coffee. My chest tightened. I wanted to tell her how much I loved her, how much I needed her. But when I opened my mouth, the words caught in my throat. Because I knew she wasn't going to meet me halfway. And that's when the emptiness became almost unbearable. Not the dramatic kind, the kind you can scream at. The quiet, gnawing emptiness that sits in your chest when you realize the person who once chose you, every day, isn't choosing you anymore. I don't remember when I stopped trying to fight for us. Maybe it was the night she fell asleep with her back to me. Maybe it was the morning she left for work without even a glance. Maybe it was the realization that no matter what I did, no matter how much I gave, no matter how much I apologized, she wasn't coming back to me. And that's the cruelest part. There was no dramatic ending. No fight, no breakup, no final word. Just absence. Just a slow, creeping realization that I had been holding on to someone who had already let go. It got worse in ways I didn't think were possible. Not loud or dramatic worse, just slow, invisible, like a faucet left running. I'd say something she might have once found funny, and she'd give me that look, the one that was neither annoyed nor amused, just distant. She wasn't angry with me. She wasn't even thinking about me. She was thinking about everything else, and I was fading. I remember one night, I tried to confront her again. I'd been holding it in for days, the gnawing ache of being unseen. "Why are you so distant?" I asked, voice low, careful. "Why do you keep shutting me out?" She blinked slowly, almost like she was weighing her words, and said, "I'm not shutting you out. You're just overthinking. I'm not responsible for your feelings." I froze. Not responsible for my feelings. That phrase has haunted me more than any yelling ever could. Because she was right, she wasn't responsible, and yet, every fiber of me wanted her to be. I wanted her to see what she was doing, to choose me again, to reassure me that I still mattered. But she didn't, and the realization that she wouldn't, that she had stopped choosing me, hit harder than any fight ever could. I started questioning myself constantly. Maybe I was overreacting, maybe I was being insecure, maybe I was imagining all the signs. But then she'd do something else. Something small. Leave the apartment without a word. Scroll on her phone while I tried to talk. Laugh softly in a way that didn't include me. And I'd remember that my imagination could never invent this kind of absence. This deliberate, quiet exclusion. And the guilt? God, the guilt. I began thinking it was my fault. I should have done more. I should have noticed sooner. I should have given her space, or maybe less space. I couldn't figure out the rules anymore. Nothing I did felt right. Every attempt to bridge the gap was met with indifference. Every attempt to explain myself was met with neutrality. One evening, we went out to dinner, just the two of us. I thought maybe a change of scenery would help. I tried to talk, really talk. About feelings, about us. She nodded, listened, and when I finished, she said, "I don't know what you want me to say. I'm not unhappy. I'm fine. I'm fine." Those two words crushed me in a way I didn't think possible. I wanted to argue, to cry, to beg. But I didn't, because I realized she wasn't lying. She was fine. She was fine without fully being with me. And there was nothing I could do to change that. The moral dilemmas began to pile up. Do I stay? Do I leave? Do I confront her, risk pushing her further away? Or do I accept the slow, quiet erosion of our connection? I couldn't figure out the right choice. And every choice I considered felt like a betrayal, to her, to myself, or both. I tried small tests, like asking for a hug, or suggesting we spend time together doing something we loved. Sometimes she'd comply, sometimes she'd brush it off. And the inconsistency, Those tiny moments of affection followed by long stretches of detachment made me question my own sanity. Was I being punished for loving her too much? For needing her too much? For noticing that she had already stopped needing me? And still, I stayed. Because love doesn't let go easily. Because hope, stupid, relentless hope, makes you believe that one moment of warmth can undo months of absence. Because the person you love has been your everything, and even when they aren't choosing you, your heart refuses to admit it. But I started noticing something else. I noticed that I was changing. I wasn't the same man who laughed at her flower-covered nose, who watched her hum in the sunlight streaming through the kitchen window. I was smaller, quieter, more cautious. I apologized too much. I measured my words. I weighed my gestures. I lived in fear of further detachment, of the next small rejection that would chip away at the remnants of my heart. And the truth hit me slowly, crushingly. She wasn't withdrawing because of something I could fix. She was withdrawing because she had already made her choice, or maybe she had made no choice at all, and in that vacuum, I ceased to exist as someone worth choosing. I started replaying everything in my head, not like a story with a clear beginning, middle, and end, more like a jumble of memories, moments that seemed insignificant at the time, now taking on the weight of a lifetime. I thought about the nights she fell asleep without me, the mornings she left without a word, the laughter that no longer reached me. I thought about the times I apologized for things I didn't need to apologize for, the things I swallowed to keep her calm, the moments I dimmed myself to fit into a space that had already been emptied of me. I remembered our first apartment, the one bedroom with the creaky floorboards, and how we used to dance in the kitchen to songs we barely knew. We'd spin around, laughing so hard we'd fall into the counters. I remembered thinking, this is forever. And now, I realized, forever wasn't hers to give. I remembered a week ago, when I had called her from work just to hear her voice. She answered, distracted, her tone polite but distant. I asked if she missed me, and she laughed softly, a sound that used to fill me with warmth. I guess, she said. I guess. Not, yes, not, of course, not even, a little. I guess. That one phrase stayed with me. I wrote it in my head like a tattoo. I started noticing the little patterns I had ignored before. The way she rolled her eyes when I got excited. The way she checked her phone during conversations. The way she said yes, but it was hollow. All these small betrayals added up, and I had ignored them because I didn't want to see them. I had hoped, always hoped, that love could bridge what she had already abandoned. I thought about leaving. I thought about packing a bag and walking out the door. But even the thought of leaving made my chest ache in ways I couldn't describe. Because love doesn't leave quietly. It claws at you, makes you bleed from the inside, and even when the person is gone, or not choosing you, you're left carrying them everywhere, inside yourself. I thought about talking to her one last time, really talking. Not to argue, not to beg, not to demand. Just to speak the truth. But what truth could I speak that she didn't already know? She didn't need me to tell her that our connection had frayed. She was living it quietly every day. And every day, she chose not to fight for me. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at her sleeping form, thinking about all the small signs I had missed. And in that moment, I understood. I had lost her. Not to someone else, not to a betrayal I could pinpoint, but to a slow, quiet withdrawal. She had stopped choosing me, and I had been too blind, too desperate, too in love to see it. And then, as I sat there, I realized something else. I didn't need her to explain it. I didn't need her to fight for us. I just needed to accept it. Acceptance didn't make the pain go away. It didn't erase the ache in my chest, the gnawing loneliness, the haunting memory of laughter that no longer included me. But it allowed me to see the truth. The relationship was over. She had already walked away, even if she didn't physically leave. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't do anything dramatic. I just sat there, holding the empty space between us, letting it settle into my bones. The quiet absence, the hollow warmth, the knowledge that love sometimes isn't enough, all of it became my reality. And in that silence, I finally understood. I couldn't make her choose me. I couldn't force her to care. I couldn't bridge a chasm she had already crossed. All I could do was sit with the loss, let it shape me, and eventually, in time, try to live in a world where she no longer chose me. Because that's the cruel, unavoidable truth of it. Love isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's invisible. Sometimes the person you've given everything to simply stops choosing you. And no matter how much you love them, no matter how much you hope, no matter how desperately you cling, you have to accept it. The nights became the hardest part. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the apartment settle, listening to her quiet breathing, or sometimes not hearing it at all, and think about how I had spent months, maybe years, trying to hold on to someone who had already let go. I began noticing the ways she filled her world without me. She would smile at her phone, laugh softly at a message I wasn't part of. She'd hum while cooking, but I wasn't included in the tune. She moved through her days with a kind of lightness I hadn't felt in months, and it wasn't for me. I tried to talk to her about it one last time. I tried to say what I felt, to reach her, to make her understand the depth of the void she had left behind. I said, "I feel like I'm losing you. I feel like you've already gone somewhere I can't follow." She looked at me, eyes steady, calm, almost unreadable. "Maybe you are," she said. And in that phrase, the world collapsed. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She didn't try to soothe me. She just observed me. She stated a truth I already knew but refused to acknowledge because I was desperate. And in that moment, I realized it wasn't my job to make her choose me. It never had been. I had been living in a delusion that love alone could hold someone in place. I had been clinging to her presence like it was a lifeline, not realizing that she had already drifted to a shore I couldn't reach. I thought about leaving, about walking out the door and never looking back. But even that seemed impossible. Because love doesn't leave neatly. It doesn't respect boundaries. It follows you into your chest, into your quiet moments, into your memories, and it doesn't care if you're ready to release it. So I stayed, in my own quiet way. I stayed with the pain, with the hollow space beside me, with the truth that I had lost her not in a fight, not in betrayal, but in the silent, unspoken choices she had made every day. She had stopped choosing me. And no amount of love, no amount of pleading, no amount of hope could change that. I began to notice myself slowly letting go. Not fully, not yet, but inch by inch, in the small ways. I stopped expecting her attention. I stopped measuring her gestures against my own. I stopped hoping for words that would never come. And even though my chest still ached, even though I still felt the absence like a weight pressing down, I started to understand that maybe this was all I could do. Accept the loss, carry it quietly, and keep living. There's a cruel clarity in that kind of love. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It doesn't end with fireworks or revelations. It ends in quiet, in absence, in the recognition that someone who once mattered more than air has stopped being part of your life in the most fundamental way. They stopped choosing you. I can't say I understand why she stopped. Maybe she needed space. Maybe she changed. Maybe love isn't enough sometimes, even when it feels like everything. What I do know is this. I lost her forever. And the hardest part isn't the absence itself. It's knowing that, despite every memory, every small moment of closeness, every attempt to bridge the gap, she simply stopped choosing me. And now, I sit here, with the ghost of her warmth lingering in the room, and I try to imagine a life where I can exist without that choice, without that presence, without that quiet, devastating love. I don't know if I'll ever fully stop feeling it. I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself for staying as long as I did. But I know one thing. Love doesn't always end with a bang. Sometimes it ends with the quiet truth that someone you gave everything to has already walked away, and the only thing left for you is to hold the space they left behind. I lost her forever, and maybe that's the hardest, cruelest kind of heartbreak there is. Days turned into weeks, though I stopped keeping track. Time became slippery, measured only by her absence or the small ways she no longer included me in her life. I began noticing the little rituals that used to define us, the coffee she would make just the way I liked it, the way she hummed while folding laundry, the way she'd run her fingers along the spine of a book she loved, and how those rituals had quietly, almost imperceptibly, excluded me. I remember one morning, I tried to join her in the kitchen. "Good morning," I said softly. She smiled, a small, polite smile that barely touched her eyes, and said, "Morning." Then she kept stirring her coffee, humming a tune I didn't recognize. I stood there for a long moment, watching her, feeling a strange combination of longing and emptiness. I wanted to touch her, to pull her close, to feel that warmth that had once defined us, but I didn't. I couldn't, because I knew the warmth wasn't really for me anymore. I started keeping a mental record of the things I missed. The way she used to brush my hair back from my forehead, laughing when it fell into my eyes. The way she'd nudge me in bed to wake up for breakfast, even when she was groggy. The small notes she left in my bag, just to make me smile. Those things were gone, and in their place, there was a quiet that felt heavier than any argument, heavier than any betrayal. I tried reaching out again, softly, gently, testing the waters. "Do you want to go for a walk?" I asked one evening. She looked up from her phone and shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe later. Maybe later." It was the same refrain, the same hollow phrase I had learned to dread. And I waited, staring at the screen, hoping she'd change her mind. She didn't. I started imagining conversations I could never have, imagining moments I could never share. I pictured her laughing with friends about something trivial, something I wasn't part of. I pictured her finding joy in things I couldn't give her anymore. And I realized that all the love I had invested in us wasn't enough to bring her back. There were nights when I considered leaving, not because I wanted to, but because I knew staying was a slow kind of self-destruction. I'd imagine packing a bag, walking out, not looking back. And then I'd catch a glimpse of her asleep, hair falling softly across her face, and I'd stay. Because even in her absence, even in her quiet withdrawal, there was still a part of me that loved her. And love doesn't leave neatly. It doesn't respect reason. It doesn't care about self-preservation. I remember one night, lying on the couch, watching her read a book. She was curled up in a blanket, the light from the lamp casting a soft glow across her face. I wanted to reach out, to brush her hair from her eyes, to hold her close, but I didn't. Because I knew that even if I touched her, even if I whispered words of love, she wouldn't choose me. She had already stopped choosing me. I began to think about the life we had imagined together, the trips, the plans, the promises. And I realized that most of those dreams had existed only in my mind. She had been part of them once, yes, but now, she was elsewhere. Physically present, perhaps, but emotionally distant, removed, untouchable. And I was left holding the memory of a person who had already left. I started noticing my own reflection in the mirror differently. The man who had once laughed freely, who had loved openly, who had lived fully for us, I barely recognized him. I was smaller, quieter, more careful with my words and gestures. I apologized too often. I smiled too little. I existed in a world that had been narrowed down to her absence and the weight of what I couldn't fix. And yet, even with all that, I didn't hate her. Not really, because there's no malice here. She didn't leave me with anger or betrayal. She left me with the quiet truth: she had stopped choosing me. That alone was enough. No dramatic exit, no screaming match, no confession, just the steady, unyielding erosion of her presence in my life. I finally accepted it, piece by piece. Not fully, not all at once, but enough to see clearly. I accepted that love doesn't always conquer distance, that devotion doesn't always earn reciprocity, that even the deepest care can be met with quiet indifference. I accepted that sometimes, no matter how much you love, no matter how deeply you give, the person you love will simply stop choosing you. And now, as I sit here, writing this, I feel the ache in my chest, the lingering ghost of her warmth, the hollow spaces she left behind. I will carry them with me, perhaps forever. And I will remember. I loved her completely, and she loved me in ways I can no longer touch. I lost her forever, and the cruelest part isn't the absence itself, it's knowing that she has moved on, that life continues, that she is fine without me, while I am left to live with the quiet, unrelenting truth: she doesn't choose me anymore. And maybe, in the quiet of this realization, there is a kind of painful freedom. The freedom to stop hoping. The freedom to stop waiting. The freedom to finally, painfully, begin to let go. Sometimes, I catch myself replaying ordinary moments, the ones I didn't realize mattered until they were gone. The way she used to hum when she thought I wasn't listening. The way she would lean against the doorway just to watch me do something trivial, like fold laundry or wash dishes. The way her laughter could fill the room so completely that it erased every worry I had. Now, those moments feel like ghosts. I reach for them, try to hold them in my mind, but they slip through my fingers. And when I do manage to remember one, a glance, a touch, a smile, it cuts me open. Not in anger, not in bitterness, but in longing. A quiet, aching longing that doesn't relent, that doesn't ask for permission, and that never goes away. Even the small rituals of our life together, like sharing a cup of tea in the evening or leaving the door slightly open when I went out, feel like relics of a past I can't inhabit. I remember one Sunday morning, when I poured coffee for both of us, expecting her to come into the kitchen and sit across from me like she used to. She didn't. She stayed in the bedroom, headphones on, scrolling through her phone. I set her cup down anyway, the steam curling up between us, and for a moment, I pretended she was there. I've realized that pretending has become part of surviving. Pretending that her warmth is still here, that her smile can still reach me, that she still chooses me. And yet, deep down, I know the truth. She has moved on in her own way, quietly, imperceptibly, leaving me with nothing but memories and the echo of her absence. Sometimes, when I lie awake at night, I imagine telling her all of this: the hurt, the longing, the realization that she doesn't choose me anymore. But I don't, because I know the words would change nothing. She wouldn't suddenly decide to stay. She wouldn't suddenly meet me halfway. She wouldn't suddenly bring back the love she's already withdrawn. And so, I carry it silently, like a scar hidden beneath my chest, aching with every heartbeat, reminding me of what I lost, of what I can never regain, of the quiet, relentless truth. She doesn't choose me anymore.